John Carpenter is an absolute legend in the film industry. Not only for his horror films, but the man has also done comedy. He's done biopics. He's done romance films. The man has done it all. Action films as well. I forgot to mention that. He's collaborated with some of the greatest actors and actresses of all time, such as Kurt Russell, Jamie Lee Curtis, Adrienne Barbeau, Donald Pleasance, some of the mainstays of the genre. There's just nothing like a John Carpenter film. His movies have this quality to them and this vibe to them that is just unmatched by any other director that I've ever seen. And John Carpenter has always been one of my all-time favorite directors, if not my favorite director of all time. Like I said, there's just something about his movies that have always just felt really cozy and warm to me, but also very cosmic and very just interesting. Like I said, his movies there's nothing quite like them. Love a good John Carpenter film. And on top of that, not only has the man done all these great films, he has done the score for so many other great films that he didn't even direct. And his music now is kind of the most important thing to him. He started directing in 1974 with Dark Star, which he collaborated with Dan O'Bannon, which Dark Star was kind of in a way a precursor to Alien, which is one of the greatest horror films of all time in my opinion. Dan O'Bannon would go on later to write Alien, kind of based on some of the concepts established in Dark Star, all the way up to 2010 with his last film that he did, The Ward, which was all right. I don't really remember much about it. Maybe I'll talk about that one at some point. I own it, but I haven't watched it pretty much since I bought it years ago. But John Carpenter will be celebrating his 78th birthday on the 16th of this month. So just in, less than a week's time, John Carpenter will be turning 78, and he's still going strong, playing his music. And I really wanted to kind of show my appreciation for, again, one of the greatest directors of all time, one of my favorites. And I want to talk about my top 5 favorite John Carpenter films. So this list is not going to be super controversial by any means. There's maybe one pick that I'll explain whenever I get to it, that might be kind of a hot take, but my picks are it seems like pretty universally picked as some of his best work. So starting off at number 5 is going to be Prince of Darkness from 1987. This is such a fun movie that really flew under my radar for a really long time. Until I got I got a copy of it years ago. I mean, this has been over 10 years ago now, that I got a copy of it. I kept hearing about this film that I'd never seen, of John Carpenter's, that I didn't really know anything about, but the concept sounded really interesting. It's basically about this priest and like this scientist guy. They find this like vat of green liquid in this church, that is basically the physical embodiment of Satan, and it just kind of spirals from there. They're all kind of trapped in this church with all these crazy kind of homeless people outside the church trying to break in, and things get really weird, and it has this really kind of odd sort of cosmic atmosphere, almost very Lovecraftian kind of atmosphere to it, that I love. This movie is great. I think it really does get a lot more appreciation nowadays. When I first saw this movie, I didn't really hear a lot of people talking about it, but it's absolutely a mainstay for me. I love it. The music in this movie is great. We get a great performance by Donald Pleasance in this movie. Anytime you get Donald Pleasance in a film, you're in for a good time. And this is just one that I recommend everybody should see. It's a great time, super fun. Highly recommend. Number 4 is going to be They Live from 1988, with Roddy Piper, Keith David, and Meg Foster are all in this film. And this movie is, I think everyone knows about this film at this point, but basically It's this the plot is Roddy Piper is just kind of this blue collar kind of working man, and he finds these sunglasses in this church, and when you put on the sunglasses, it reveals what the world actually is, and it is run by these aliens who are giving us sort of subliminal messages, telling us to obey and spend money and all this other stuff, and they're basically trying to take over the world. And I've always loved this concept of a world just kind of right underneath our noses that we don't really know about. Again, it's another very deep kind of cosmic sort of thing to think about, and it's great. This movie's action packed. It's got great music. Just it's awesome. It honestly feels a little bit, in a way, kind of like a Western sort of kind of. That's kind of how I've heard other people say that, but that's kind of how I've always felt about it. It's just got this really just this great vibe to it. Very interesting plot. Fun movie. Very quotable lines. Like when Roddy Piper, I came here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble gum. Number 3 is going to be Escape from New York from 1981 with Kurt Russell. I believe that this was John Carpenter's first collaboration with Kurt Russell. I can't remember if Elvis came before this or not. I can't remember off the top of my head. But this movie is so much fun. It is one of my favorite action films of all time. It's a very simple kind of plot, but it's just it's a very ambitious project for John Carpenter to take on. And basically what the plot of this movie is, New York City has been walled off and is kind of this giant mega prison where they just take all these prisoners and sort of dump them into New York City and let them kind of fend for themselves. And Air Force One has been hijacked and crashed into New York City. The people who kind of police New York City, they have no choice but to send in Kurt Russell, who is Snake Plissken, basically this ultimate badass kind of guy, to go in and retrieve the president. And it's such a good movie. The concept of this would be later used in stuff like Batman Arkham City, the game that's kind of a similar sort of plot if you're familiar with that. But this movie's so fun. It's got this. I mean, even though I've seen it 100 times, the movie is really tense because Snake has this thing that they put in his neck where basically if he does not get the president out by a certain time and within a certain time frame, it's going to explode his arteries in his neck and kill him. So it adds this tension throughout the whole movie that even though, like I said, I've seen it 100 times, it still gets me every time, because it's just, he keeps looking at the little watch thing the whole movie and you're like, oh my God, you've only got this much longer to go. You've got, Anyway, great film. Donald Pleasance again comes back for this. Adrienne Barbeau is in this film, among several other great actors are in this movie. I highly recommend it. The New York, the kind of apocalyptic looking New York looks amazing. It's got some excellent matte paintings done in this movie, which I think were actually done. Some of them by James Cameron did some of these, which is just great. I love a good matte painting in a film, and this movie it looks incredible. Excellent plot. Like I said, very simple kind of story, but it's done so well. I highly recommend this movie. Number 2 is going to be The Fog from 1980. The Fog is such a damn good movie. This is one that I remember. It was probably the second John Carpenter movie I ever remember seeing. Of course, Halloween would probably have been the first, to my knowledge anyway. But I remember my parents always telling me about The Fog, and I still have the DVD that my parents got many years ago. This was such a great film. I think this was his next film after Halloween, if I'm not mistaken. And I love it because it's just the whole movie has this really, it's got this really nice kind of campfire story vibe set up, by the very opening scene of the movie. It's just this really kind of simple sort of ghost story kind of thing that goes on. And so basically, this fog rolls into this town, and this sort of ghost ship comes into town, and and it's this ghostly crew on this ship. Basically, the town had kind of plotted against these this crew on this ship, and ultimately led them to their death. So they're kind of back for their revenge, and they kind of want to. They're there to get their gold. This is such a great atmospheric movie. I love it. It's kind of this seaside kind of town, and it's just got this really spooky vibe to it. The ghost pirates, you don't see much of them. Really at all. There's certain parts where you kind of see them, but a lot of times they're obscured by shadows, and they just kind of come up and they're knocking on people's doors, and they sort of just kind of start to kill off some people, and in very gruesome ways. But it's a very spooky, very eerie movie. Great for a really late night kind of watch if you haven't seen this before. Again, in this movie, we get Tom Atkins, who was also in Escape from New York. I should have mentioned Tom Atkins is a frequent collaborator with John Carpenter. He's great in this movie. Jamie Lee Curtis is in this movie, and Adrienne Barbeau, which, funny enough, I have the Scream Factory Blu-ray for actually pretty much all these that I've talked about. And I think it's funny because Jamie Lee Curtis is really on a lot of the promotional material for The Fog, but Adrienne Barbeau is really kind of your standout lead girl in this movie. And I like that on the Scream Factory Blu-ray, they kind of put Adrienne Barbeau sort of front and center, and kind of put Jamie Lee Curtis sort of off to the side. Not that I don't love Jamie Lee Curtis, but again, she was sort of the secondary in this film to Adrienne Barbeau. She really is kind of the lead girl of this movie. And I think John Carpenter and Adrienne Barbeau got married either right before this movie or shortly after it. But I cannot recommend The Fog enough. Love it. The Fog is such a great film. I don't even want to say underrated, because I do hear a lot of people mention it, but I think that it deserves a lot more love than what it does get, because The Fog is so good. Before we get to our number one spot, I do want to bring up some honorable mentions, because this list was really, really difficult to make. I've got to put that out there right now. I struggled for probably a good 2 hours making this list, because again, John Carpenter is one of my all-time favorite directors, and there's so many great films that he's made that it's almost impossible to narrow it down just to 5. But I kind of wanted to challenge myself a little bit and bring it down to 5. So I figured, screw it, I'm going to put in some honorable mentions that I also enjoy, and even then, I was still mixing and matching stuff here and there, and I really couldn't decide. This list changed probably 7 or 8 times throughout the course of me making it. So honorable mentions are, and these are in no particular order, but number 5 is going to be In the Mouth of Madness from 1984 with Sam Neill. This is one that I actually just kind of watched recently. It's one that I've been just putting off for years and years and years. And I finally picked up a copy of it, and I sat down to watch it. And I think the reason for that is because a lot of John Carpenter's 90s, the 90s and then his early kind of 2000s films really are not my cup of tea. That's where he started to kind of not really fall off, but he just, I don't know, I don't really care for that era of John Carpenter as much as his 70s and his 80s work. That's where John Carpenter really shined, was in that era. So I think that's really why I kind of put this movie kind of on the back burner for so long. But I finally did sit down to watch In the Mouth of Madness, like I said, fairly recently, and I loved it. I thought it was an excellent film. Again, flew under my radar for many, many years, but I don't really have that connection with it like I do other things, like I've said, like Escape from New York, or They Live, or The Fog, things like that. So that's kind of the reason that one didn't kind of make the full-on list. Number 4 on of honorable mentions is going to be Big Trouble in Little China from 1986. This movie is so much fun. I love it, and it's one that I do love. I just don't find myself going back to it a lot. But it's another collaboration with Kurt Russell. He's in this movie. He does great. But this movie is a great kind of all around sort of goofy, just wild movie. Like, there's so much shit going on in this movie. It's really kind of hard to pinpoint it into a particular genre. I do still highly recommend it. It was hard because it went on and off of the main list many times, but ultimately I decided to kind of move it to the honorable mentions. But it's still a great film. I again highly recommend it. I think everyone should see Big Trouble in Little China, China at least once, and it's one of those that I think was received very poorly, which unfortunately a lot of John Carpenter's films were kind of box office sort of, I don't really want to say failures, but they just didn't perform as well as some other films. And that's mainly just due to, and of course later on, they've all these films have a huge cult following. But some of these films started to fall off, and I know that Big Trouble in Little China was received very poorly, which is unfortunate because it's such a fun, ridiculous, crazy movie. Highly recommend that. Number 3 is going to be Christine from 1983. Christine is a great film. It's another one that I grew up watching. Now, one thing I can say is that I really wish John Carpenter had done more Stephen King adaptations because he did this so well. It is one of the best Stephen King adaptations of any of them that I've seen. We're kind of right behind. If I were to do a list of best Stephen King film adaptations, The Shining would probably be number 1 because I love The Shining, with Jack Nicholson, and Christine would probably be right underneath that because it, as far as an adaptation goes, it is so damn good. I love Christine, but like I said, as far as this list is concerned, I didn't really want to put it on the main list, just because again, it's one of those that I don't find myself going back to a whole lot. Number 2 is going to be Body Bags from 1993. I love Body Bags. I remember the first time I ever saw Body Bags, it came on some channel, I can't remember, just really late at night one night, and I was like, oh, this is a John Carpenter film I hadn't even heard of. I didn't even know about this, and this was a long time ago. This was when I was little. I remember it coming on TV and finding out, not only is it a John Carpenter film I hadn't seen at the time, but it was an anthology film, which I just thought was great. I'm a huge fan of anthology films. And it's just great. I mean, basically what this was is it was kind of John Carpenter's version of like Tales from the Crypt. I think Showtime was supposed to actually pick this film up and it's supposed to make a series out of it, but they did the pilot episode and I don't know if it underperformed or what, but we are just left with Body Bags as a film. And we do get 3 stories in this film, with the first one is great with Robert Carradine is in that one. Wes Craven actually even shows up in a cameo. Buck Flower is in there. And it's sort of just your basic sort of slasher. It's very Halloween-esque. In this first kind of story, it takes place at a gas station. I love it. It's great. It's got a really nice vibe to it. I love that first story. The second story, which has Stacy Keach in it, about his hair. That's basically a living organism, planted on him by these aliens or whatever have you. Excellent story. I love it very much. That's probably my favorite of the 3. That's such a fun idea. I love it. Great time. And then the third story in this, which actually has Mark Hamill in it, is about this. It's called The Eye. It's basically where Mark Hamill gets the eye of he loses his eye and he gets a serial killer's eyeball transplanted into his eye socket, I guess, and he kind of starts to go crazy and lose his mind. And that segment was actually directed by Tobe Hooper, who, of course, is the director of the greatest, one of the greatest horror films of all time, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And honestly, that's the only reason that this movie didn't really make the main list is because it's not a full-on John Carpenter directed piece. It was a collaboration with, like I said, with Tobe Hooper. And that's really kind of the only reason that it didn't make, because otherwise I love Body Bags. I watch that movie all the time. I have the Scream Factory Blu-ray of it. It's actually one of the first Scream Factory releases I got. It was that one and The Burning. My mom bought me those years and years ago, and I love that movie. I highly recommend it to anybody if you love anthology films and you love John Carpenter. John Carpenter plays sort of the Crypt Keeper-esque host in the movie, and he's so fucking funny. He cracks me up. He's this guy who's working in this kind of morgue, and he's just sitting there drinking formaldehyde. Great time. Highly recommend Body Bags if you haven't seen it. And number one of my honorable mentions, and this is kind of my hot take where, people are either going to be pissed off or whatever, but I don't care. It's my list. And that is Halloween from 1978. So the only reason Halloween did not make my actual top 5 list, it's just because I feel like Halloween overshadows so much of John Carpenter's other work, because John Carpenter has done so many other excellent films, and I feel like Halloween is always on everybody's list, and I didn't want to just keep giving Halloween sort of the top spot, because I do love, and having said that, I do love Halloween. Excellent film, very well done, but it just like I said, I think that Halloween just sort of overshadows a lot of other great films that John Carpenter has done. Halloween is iconic. It is one of the most well-known and probably one of the best slasher films of all time. Great film. But I had to put in the honorable mention spot because, and the reason for that is because number one on my top 5 list is going to be The Thing from 1982, which in my personal opinion is John Carpenter's greatest film of all time. It is his masterpiece. And it's not only that, it is one of my favorite horror films of all time, period. I love The Thing. The Thing is such an incredible, powerful movie. It is a loose remake of The Thing from Another World. The Howard Hawks film, and which is also great. I do love that movie as well. They are both based off the book by John W. Campbell Jr., Who Goes There, which is a great book as well. So, I think it's actually more of a short story. I have read the book. I have that one, and I have Frozen Hell, which is kind of the expanded version of Who Goes There, and it's a great story. I don't read many books, but that is one that I really wanted to read for a long time, and I do think that John Carpenter's film kind of pays a little bit more. It takes a little bit more from the book than The Thing from Another World, whereas the original Thing from Another World is sort of just kind of your Frankenstein monster esque creature. The John Carpenter's The Thing really takes all the sort of paranoia that you get from the book and the shape-shifting creature. That's the stuff that I love, and the effects in this movie are so well done. It's so gory and so violent. Everything looks great. Rob Bottin did all the special effects for this movie, and I believe Stan Winston had a few little things that he did in this movie as well, but it was mainly Rob Bottin. Such a great job. You have an excellent cast in this movie with Kurt Russell, Keith David, Wilford Brimley. Just excellent cast. I love the atmosphere, the isolation that this movie kind of gives you, and the paranoia that kind of is built up in this movie around who is the Thing. It's such an excellent movie. I can't say enough good things about it. It's the perfect cold, snowy night movie. We're kind of getting into winter time now, so it's probably going to be in my player pretty regularly, and I do plan to talk about it pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, that was my top 5 favorite John Carpenter films of all time. Like I said, this was a really, really difficult list to make. Easily some of these could be moved around. I mean, I might actually publish this review, and then I might actually even change my mind, because that's usually what happens. I'm very indecisive on stuff like this. But no matter what, I will say The Thing will always have my top spot, because I believe that is John Carpenter's absolute, without a doubt, masterpiece. Love The Thing. So I'd like to hear what everybody else's top 5 Carpenter films are. If you'd like to comment those below, please do. I love seeing stuff like that, and I love hearing what other people, what they would put in their top spot, or what they would, whatever have you. So if you feel like leaving that below in the comments, please do. I try to respond to all of them when I can, the few that I get anyway. So until next time, stay tuned for the next episode of the DVD Graveyard. And as always, have a great night and goodbye.